Today, we are diving deep into one of the most famous showdowns in all of philosophy, George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel's massive critique of Immanuel Kant. And trust me, this isn't just some academic squabble. This is a battle over the very nature of reality itself.
All right, so let's just start with the huge question that both of these guys were obsessed with. When you look at the world, when you see cause and effect, when you recognize one thing is separate from another, are you discovering how the universe actually is? Or is your own mind creating that order, projecting a kind of mental blueprint onto a world that's otherwise just chaos? That's the battleground.
Now, Kant came along with an answer that completely turned philosophy on its head. It was a massive leap forward, no doubt about it. But for Hegel, and this is the whole story right here, Kant takes this incredible leap, gets right to the very edge of the ultimate truth, and then, at the last possible second, he just takes a step back.
Okay, so to really get why Hegel was so critical, you have to appreciate the absolute genius of what Kant did first. He kicked off what he called his own Copernican revolution in thinking.
For centuries, the assumption was simple. Our minds have to conform to the world to understand it. But Kant just flips that whole idea upside down. He says, no, the world has to conform to our minds. All those basic structures we take for granted, things like space, time, cause, and effect, he argued, they aren't actually out there in the world. They are the rules, the categories that our own minds use to assemble raw sensory data into something that makes sense.
Hegel had a name for this: subjective idealism. Now, the word idealism here can be tricky. It doesn't mean the world is just a dream or something. It just means the idea, the concept, the structure of things comes from the mind. And subjective just means it comes from us, the thinking subjects.
And this quote just nails it. Think of us, you and me, the synthesizing subjects, as architects. We get all this raw material from our senses, and we use the blueprints inside our own reason to build the structured, objective world we experience every day.
So Hegel totally admired the blueprint. He respected the architect. But he thought the final building was fundamentally flawed. He saw these deep, structural cracks in Kant's entire worldview. Hegel's critique really boils down to three huge problems. First, a massive chasm he called the impassable gulf. Second, this mysterious ghost in the machine that Kant called the thing in itself. And third, a fundamental problem Hegel labeled formalism.
So first up, this impassable gulf. In Kant's system, you've got our structured, knowable world of appearances on one side, and then, way over on the other side, you have the real world, true reality. And according to Kant, there's just no bridge. We are permanently cut off from ever knowing things as they really are.
And what is this unknowable reality? Well, that's the famous, or maybe infamous, thing in itself. It's the source of all our sensations, but it is a complete and total mystery. We can know that it exists, but we can never, ever know what it is. It's a hard stop, a limit to all human knowledge.
Hegel thought this was just completely unacceptable. To him, the thing in itself wasn't some profound cosmic limit. It was a spectral ghost that our own thinking had created. It's like building a wall around yourself and then complaining that you can't see what's on the other side. For Hegel, the whole point of philosophy wasn't to bow down to this limit, but to completely dissolve it.
And finally, we get to the charge of formalism. Hegel said, look, Kant's mental categories, concepts like causality or unity, they're just empty containers. They're like cookie cutters. Sure, they can give shape to things, but they can't make the dough. They need this alien impulse, this raw data from the unknowable thing in itself to have anything to work on. And for Hegel, that meant our minds were still ultimately passive, just waiting around to organize material it could never truly know.
But, and this is where the story gets really juicy, Hegel believed that Kant himself, in this one amazing flash of genius, actually saw the way out of his own system. He found the bridge across the very gulf he had just created.
This incredible moment happens in Kant's third big book, The Critique of Judgment. In it, he's wrestling with some really tough problems about beauty and purpose in nature, and he does this amazing little thought experiment. He says, just imagine a totally different kind of mind, one that isn't stuck with all our human limits. He calls it an intuitive intellect. So picture a godlike mind. For this mind, thinking of something and creating that something are the exact same action. There is zero gap between the concept of a tree and the actual tree. Possibility and reality are one. It doesn't need to get information from the outside because its thought is reality. You can just imagine Hegel reading this part and his mind being blown. For him, this wasn't just some clever little idea. This was it. This was Kant stumbling onto the deepest truth of the universe, the ultimate unity of thought and being. Kant was standing right there, at the front door of the absolute.
But then came what for Hegel was the great philosophical tragedy. Kant walks right up to that door, peeks through the keyhole, and then refuses to walk through it. He retreats right back into the safety of his own subjective idealism.
And this chart shows the fundamental disagreement perfectly. For Kant, this idea of an intuitive intellect was just a useful concept for us. It's a neat little ideal that helps us organize our knowledge and see nature as if it were designed. But for Hegel, this was a genuine glimpse into how reality actually is. It wasn't just an idea in our heads, it was the objective truth of the absolute revealing itself.
So here's the bottom line. Kant discovers this incredible possibility of a total unity between our minds and the world, between subject and object. But then he basically demotes it. He calls it a useful psychological tool, a handy fiction for us limited humans. He found the key to the universe and decided it was just a neat-looking paperweight.
And that brings us to Hegel's perfect metaphor for all of this, the ladder. 1. Kant built a vital ladder that rescued philosophy from a really simplistic way of thinking. 2. He correctly saw the immense freedom and power of our own minds, of self-consciousness. But 3. Ultimately, he climbed all the way to the top of the ladder, and then he just stayed there, forever failing to take that final step off the ladder and onto the roof, to actually bridge the gap to reality itself.
So we're left with this incredibly provocative question that really launches Hegel's entire philosophy. Kant believed that our reason is a pair of glasses we can never take off. It shapes and colors everything we see. But Hegel asks us to think about something way more radical. What if reason isn't the glasses, but is the light? What if the logical structure of our own thoughts is the very same structure as the universe itself? And exploring that possibility? Well, that's the world Hegel sets out to map.
Das